Okay, so this is our second mission, Collateral Damage, and we're actually have someone new with us. Darius has joined the crew. So, for this mission, all I want to note narratively is this interesting tension it has, which it shares with a lot of free space missions, between the need to show this linear, atmospheric narrative to actually make something happen, and the need to give the player agency, because in a good mission you really need the player to make a difference to the course of events. But in this one, we couldn't really let that happen. Everything had to be predetermined. And part of the reason for that is the purpose of this mission, which was to make a very specific point. And I think Darius wants to talk about how this mission actually came to be. So, over to you, Darius.
Right, well, I think it was post-Meridian that was supposed to come after, was it Cost of War? But I think Battuta made a pretty good point that the player at this point was only told that how badly the war was going. There wasn't really any evidence, apart from one frigate blowing up, which was the Cormorant, in the first cutscene. And so we decided that the best way a player could identify with the war being going as badly as it should is the number of friendly ships that get blown up. So this mission was born, and Battuta was the guy who made it happen. Correct, am I?
Well, that's not strictly true, since this opening is your work. Speaking of which, the E, do you want to talk about this flak ambush?
The flak ambush,
Heavy damage.
it's just like the opening of Cost of War. It's just there to put you right into the action, and in this case to drive home the point of how deadly War in Heaven flag is. If you're looking at the hull damage QD has taken already here, I think that makes it quite clear just what you are supposed to do here. It's really we just want to make clear that this is almost like this is more real than earlier, than Free Space 2 Retail and other campaigns. Over to you.
Yeah, so we just saw the Narayana frigate there coming off. You can see the Daimos fighting it here. And I think that's a favorite ship for a lot of the developers. I know Darius and the E both like it. Right there, you can see it at about 257. And the Narayana is an interesting ship history-wise. It's always been in the mod pack, and it's always had artillery, but in terms of the campaign story, it only was equipped with these massive artillery weapons really recently. And the reason for that is, as we were designing the mod pack, we knew that the Alliance was supposed to have this huge advantage in terms of warships. And the question is, if their warships are so powerful, why haven't they won the war already? So we tried to give the Federation a couple deterrents, one of which was their incredibly powerful bombers, and the other one is this artillery, which lets them sort of peck capital ships to death from a really long range. And that makes these Narayanas really vital assets. So as the E once said, we really wanted each of these ships to feel like it was a critical part of the war, and that you really had to defend it. I don't know how well that came across here. But in fact, the Narayana didn't get that much screen time in Act 1 outside of a few scripted sequences. And there is our first subspace missile strike, so I want to hand over to the E to talk about that.
Subspace missile strikes, as the veterans among the audience know, they have been part of Free Space for a very long time, but they've never been used quite that often, because, quite frankly, they're a bit hard to figure out how to set them up. We use them here to... one thing we noticed during the development is that bombers are really not that good an idea. You can throw waves of bombers at Federation ships and they'll just eat them for breakfast. And of course, as veteran pilots know, piloting a bomber, or being in a bomber is like being in a death trap. You just get shot down very easily. And so we used subspace missiles to pose a credible threat to our capital ships, but at the same time, without using waves after waves of bombers or enemy capital ships, because just like the Federation capital ships are important, the Alliance ships are just as important as well. We have a limited supply of them, and we try to make sure that every appearance is unique in some way or another. Anything more to say, Battuta?
Subspace missiles? Not too much, except that they just posed a very interesting balance problem. We decided pretty early on that we wanted to use the EOS missile, and there's actually other subspace missile strike types using the far more deadly supernova, but the EOS we found was just powerful enough. Those, by the way, are fired by the Atreus and its missile batteries. And they use special munitions, which is why you don't see many of them, because they're ridiculously expensive and still pretty rare. So here we have an AWACS jumping in. The AWACS we decided to use a lot in this campaign. We share Axum's love for it. And there's just all sorts of fascinating things you can do by having an AWACS present. It gives you an excuse to pull off a lot of sort of red magic. And I don't think we've even scratched the surface of what we can do. But in our missions, AWACS are pretty prominent. We really wanted to play that up. That the Alliance could really coordinate their fighter strikes. They could do these pop-up trebuchet attacks and things like that, as long as they had an AWACS on the scene. Because again, that gives a lever for player interaction. If the player can destroy the AWACS and prevent some sort of tactic from happening, that increases the player's agency over the battlefield, which is something we really want to have, even on missions like this where you're basically railroaded, because these two ships are going to die. Speaking of which, coming up in this horrible, horrible death of the Akula here, Darius, do you have anything you want to throw in on that topic? We didn't script anything, but...
On the Akula, well, I was also going to make a mention on the trebuchet strike, because I found that an interesting gameplay element that hasn't really been, well, I haven't seen it done in many mods. Well, boom, there goes the Akula, talking right over it. I think it makes for a very different gameplay experience, being on the other end of a trebuchet strike for once. Yeah, those explosions by night eyes are just pretty damn cool. Anyone want to come in on something, Battuta?
Yeah, we've got a Cirker team coming up here with their big introduction, and Cirker was part of our drive to make capital ships important, to feel like they had character, and to create a bit of threat. So they show up once here, and once in Mission 10, and you're going to be seeing more of them in the future. And the idea with Cirker team is that they're a group of the next generation corvettes that, there they are, were basically trained, the elite of the elite, to take out Sithonises. And like we saw in AOA, these ships really are pretty good at it. They can deal with Shivan destroyers. And as such, they're just ridiculous overkill against these Federation warships. To the point where these three corvettes, Cirker team, even without a lot of their fancy extra gear, like their active armor and their enhanced point defenses, can actually take out a Solaris destroyer one-on-one in like 30 seconds. They're just incredibly powerful. So we wanted to create this recurring menace for the player to deal with. And as I've mentioned, they do have enhanced point defenses, and they use Fury AI at one of its higher levels, so you really don't want to get close. They have those pulse cannons Darius implemented back in Blue Planet 1, which make things really dangerous if you get too near. So here we have a strike team of Uriel gunships and Durga bombers coming in. And Uriels are great because of their turrets. You can see some Myrmidons getting blasted here. I actually wanted to hand it back to Darius and the I guess I should specify which. I want to hand it back to Darius to talk about exactly what the Uriel is designed to do.
Well, basically, the Uriel could be sort of seen as a hybrid as some of the more powerful GTVA fighters like the Erinye, with their sort of overwhelming cannon firepower, but given a bit of a twist in that they've got that underslung sort of Ghost Driver cannon. Makes them very useful against subsystems. And we've tabled in the ability for them to carry jackhammer torpedoes, which means in a pinch they can do bombing runs, which they do here, paired up with some Durga bombers. this is the first mission where you actually get to see them in action as bombers, and yeah, they're basically gunships. Gunships with a sort of like a emphasis on primary firepower. Would you say that would be an accurate estimation, Dai?
Absolutely, I love the Uriel, especially in the later missions when you get to fight against fighters and corvettes. It's a beautiful ship. It handles very well for my standards. Basically, if you love the Ares class fighter from Free Space 2, you're going to really love the Uriel, in my estimation. Battuta?
Yeah, we're coming up on this narrative coda here, which was, a lot of our missions have these codas. Some of them are a little too long and we added dialogue skips to some of them, which I hope work. And this coda is just an attempt to point out the perspective on what happened, because after, I think most of us have played a lot of fan-made campaigns and we've seen a ton of ships blow up. But during development we realized the colossal scale of some of these losses. I mean, right here Laporte is talking about how many people there are on these ships, and we actually lowballed those numbers. We figured the Federation had made some strides in crew efficiency, because canonically something like a corvette has thousands of people aboard. And we just really wanted the player to know, you know, every time you screw up like this, not that you've screwed up here, but every time one of your ships goes down, there's a huge cost in human lives. And again, this mission right here, Bree says, you can't always be a hero. The lesson sort of is that this war is so fast and just has so much mechanistic momentum. It's just churning forward, that sometimes there's nothing any one person can do to change the course of events. And again, there's a definite tension between that and the desire to give the player urgency, because nobody likes a self-playing mission. And although Free Space does have a lot of forced fail missions, I wouldn't exactly say they're fan favorites either. So we're jumping out, heading to the debrief. I've said pretty much everything I want to say. So I'm going to hand it over. We'll try to do some real-time banter here. You guys want to throw anything in?
Not really. I mean, from my perspective, everything that needs to be said has been said about this mission. We're going to talk a bit more about the other missions, and let's see what we can come up with there. Darius?
Well, this mission is your first big tangling with the big ships of the mod pack, and you can think of it as a kind of a warm-up to the next mission, which is the full-on big brawl with destroyer scale sort of ships, and I think it makes for a good set battle, actually.
Right, I think that's it.